So today I'm going to talk about the economics of Brazil. Brazil is the 8th largest economy in the world based on nominal GDP. It's the largest economy in Latin America, and its GDP in 2010 was $2.09 trillion. I want to tell you a little bit about Brazil's economic history, because its economic history is fundamentally important in understanding where it is today macroeconomically. Now, Cardoso, he was the president from 2005 until 2002, and he enacted what they call the Real Plan. Now, before he came into power as president and before that as finance minister, there was rampant inflation in Brazil. They had no economic stability until this point. So the Real Plan's goal was to stabilize the economy and gain international credibility, because they had none. The Real Plan controlled hyperinflation, enacted structural reforms, and had a macroeconomic tripod that included a floating exchange rate, fiscal responsibility, and inflation targeting regime. During this time, the average GDP growth was 2.3% per year. After that administration, we have what you call the Lula administration. Because of Cardoso and his people, in his administration rather, they had a much more stable economy, which meant they had more growth opportunity. As you see during this period, GDP growth averaged about 4% per year, which is larger than the 2.3% previously. His success was in large part due to reforms because of the other presidential administration. And because of those economic reforms, Lula had the ability to focus on some more social reforms. Now let's focus a little bit on inflation in Brazil. See, in this chart, you see the inflation target, the red line, and the red dots are the tolerance intervals for inflation. Inflation fell from a whopping 916% in 1994 to 22% in 1995, mainly because of the plan that Cardoso enacted. The current inflation target from 2006 until today is 4.5%, which again has a 2% tolerance interval, which means it could go 2% higher or 2% lower, but they'd like to keep inflation in that range. Now, economic growth. This is just a nice snapshot of the GDP growth, both in Cardoso's administration at 2.3% and at 4% in Lula's administration. You can see it rising because of the economic stability here, continued economic stability, and increased stability in social issues because of policy changes. So that's all well and good, but guess what? Brazil has been below average on economic growth. If you see from 2004 to 2008, the average growth of GDP in Brazil was 4.8%, while other emerging markets were at a whopping 7.3%. This is a vast difference in GDP growth. And why is that? It's because of the large inequality gap in Brazil. Again, if you look at Brazil in comparison to other countries in Latin America, from 2003 to 2009, Latin America had a GDP growth of 4.6, while Brazil was only at 3.5. Look at the differences here between a country like Argentina at 7.4 and Brazil in the red at 3.5. Significantly different, and even though they have macroeconomic stability, they cannot achieve significant economic growth without closing their income gap. Now let's talk to Raymond, and he'll discuss tax systems.